Good everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome all the participants to this webinar organized by IMT Ghaziabad on the topic leadership during COVID-19. Today we have with us four eminent panelists, including the director of IMT Ghaziabad, Professor Subhajit Bhattacharyya. I welcome all the panelists to this particular webinar and look forward to hearing your views. So we have the webinar scheduled from 4 to 5 p.m. We have around 1 hour for our discussion. So how we would go about this is we will have a brief introduction of the panelists initially. Then we will listen to each of the panelists individually for a short, and then we can have a discussion based on the time left. We can have a discussion round, probably 15 minutes before we take up the Q&A. Before starting off the webinar, I would request all the participants to keep yourself in the mute mode, except for the panelists, because otherwise the webinar tends to get disturbed in between. Okay, thank you. So to start off, I would like to introduce our beloved director, Professor Bhattacharyya. Professor Bhattacharyya comes with a wide legacy of experience with the IMT group of institutions. Sir was previously the director of IMT Nagpur before his stint at IMT Ghaziabad. Doctorate from IGIDR Mumbai. Professor Bhattacharyya has over 23 years of experience in academia and industry and 17 years with IMT group of institutions. So even at IMT Ghaziabad, he has, in his previous stint, he has held multiple leadership roles. I think sir is an ideal person to speak about leadership during COVID times. So I welcome you on board, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Shawn, and thank you, all our participants and co-panelists for, joining this event today, this afternoon. This is one very important topic, and I'm sure, as we keep discussing many dimensions of this topic, we'll learn a lot from each other during the course of the event. So, I was, as Shawn is saying, as with IMT Ghaziabad for about 12 years before moving to IMT Nagpur as director, and then I've joined back as director of IMT Ghaziabad. So just joined 2 years back. So long way ahead. So a lot of things has to be done. Yeah, that's about me, Shawn. So
yeah. So I would briefly introduce the other participants before getting into the topic.
Yeah.
So our second panelist on board is one of our popular professors, Professor Shailja Agarwal from the business communication area. Ma'am is the chairperson of the part-time program, the PGDM part-time program at IMT Ghaziabad. Again, comes with a lot of experience of over a decade and a half in academia. So being a professor in the business communication area with ma'am's expertise, I think we would love to hear on your views on what a leader should be, what are the leadership qualities, and how a leader can actually, reinvent himself or herself during this particular crisis. So we look forward to hearing from you, ma'am, and welcome on board.
Thank you so much, Shawn.
Yeah. Other than the faculty on board, we have 2 other alums who are a part of this particular webinar. It's always a pleasure to welcome back alums to any sort of engagement with the institute. So it's my great pleasure to welcome both Mr. Prasun Gupta and Mr. Amit Goel to this particular webinar. To give you a brief introduction, Mr. Prasun is an AVP with Genpact currently. He's a graduate of the MBA part-time program 2015-18, if I'm correct. And his expertise is in the areas of digital transformation and project management. So welcome on board, Mr. Prasun. Look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shawn, and the whole IMT team.
And our fourth and last panelist is Mr. Amit Goel. Mr. Goel is currently a AVP with RBS Network Markets and manages multiple distributed computing platforms for risk calculation via trading teams. He handles a team spread across 3 continents, with primarily based in UK, Asia, and US. And he comes with a rich blend of expertise in the industry. We look forward to hearing from you, and particularly from both the alums, we would also like to hear about your experiences at IMT, other than in addition to your views on the topic. So I welcome all the 4 panelists on board. Before we start, again, I would like to reiterate, ask all the panelists, except for the panelists, I ask all the participants to please keep yourself in the mute mode so that there are no disturbances during the webinar. We will take all the questions towards the end of the webinar. So I request everyone to actually put in your queries in the chat, and I can collate and take it up towards the end. With that, without much further ado, I get away straight into the webinar. I invite Professor Bhattacharyya to kick off the discussion on this.
Yeah, thank you, Shawn. Any challenge actually proves the actual quality of leadership an organization has, because this is where the leadership gets an opportunity to establish where in which direction they are supposed to take the organization to. There are certain circumstances where probably not much can be done, but however, this is where it's like the captain of the ship. What actions they take depends on the future of the organization. Let me talk about few of the challenges usually leadership faces during this time, an organization faces during this time. So first and foremost, the most important one is meeting targets. So when particularly in this kind of situation where you're compelled to stop all operations, compelled to stop your factory, and then you cannot actually undertake any of the activities that you planned for. The main challenge is your meeting targets, because that is a commitment to your clients, your commitment to your employees, commitment to your society. If you do not fulfill that, probably it will have much larger implications for your survival of your organization. So therefore, this is one big challenge. The second challenge, I would suggest that all organizations, they always prepare for a broader growth plan, and for that purpose they take various strategic actions. And when you are already in the process of implementing this, and then you face this kind of crisis, not only about this COVID, but any kind of crisis. We have gone through many such crises earlier. The financial crisis of 2008, then we had this COVID at this point of time. There were phases, but not so much, I would say acute conditions, like, we had the health related crisis also earlier occasions. So how do you, implement your strategic plans during this period is actually the main problem. You may have to work on the existing plan. You may have to rework on the strategy itself. You may have to reorient your strategic direction of business. Particularly, in this time, many businesses are actually facing difficulty, and the very basic questions they're asking is whether they would survive. Particularly, tour and travel industry. Airlines are in shambles, right? So hotel industry, all other, and it's not only the big companies. There are many auxiliary and very small micro level organizations and even individuals. They are so deeply involved with this big industry, but they don't know what to do in future. So therefore, this is where they have to think about reorienting, their direction of business. They have to explore other opportunities. The other challenges are like, you will have typical operational challenges. There could be HR issues. First and foremost, in any crisis, you have to take care of your employees, right? So you have to fulfill the employee needs. You have to see that, the employees are not adversely affected substantially during this period, difficult time. However, this is also probably a time where you will be compelled to go for optimizing your employee cost, because your business is getting affected adversely. You may not be able to run the business in the full scale as you originally planned. So you have to, look for resizing your business scale. Accordingly, you have to optimize employee cost. And there could be emergent issues from employee side, as you go through this optimizing employee cost activities. So all these are big challenges and multidimensional challenges. In addition to that, you have got, the typical for any organization, cash flow management is a very crucial an activity. You may have lot many commitment for payments, but your receivables are getting stuck up because your clients are not paying, right? So therefore, how do you manage this cash flow? So and it may happen, may not happen that you have sufficient corpus to survive for maybe 6 months, maybe a year. But what if you don't have? What if you are actually minimizing all these, this kind of costs? So therefore, cash flow management is one of the major, problem areas in this kind of conditions. So, however, a good leader would always try to see that how do we function, how do we, reorient our operations, reorient our business models in such a way that we convert this disruptive situation into an opportunity, right? So a good leader has to look for new opportunities. A good leader has to look for innovative actions, that will give them advantage even in this difficult situation. They have to look for new businesses. They have to, explore opportunities for optimizing operations. They have to, explore opportunities for bringing in efficiencies in the system. And this is a time when, if you look at organization point of view, survival of the organization point of view, the bigger perspective, of the existence of the organization, bringing in efficiency is a very crucial part of the existence, and this is the time probably you can do that. You have to explore the opportunities for automation, digitization, maybe restructuring organization. So all these areas a good leader would like to look at, and then create path for future. But fundamentally, as is observed everywhere, any crisis situation creates a kind of a moral challenge. I mean, the basic challenge of the mentality of the employees, their motivation level, their mental strength. Leadership's role would be to keep this employee moral high at any cost. So they have to take actions which will keep them at the very high level of motivation level, so that whatever changes they bring in, whatever new business model they bring in, whatever new directions the business takes, they get their employees along. And that is what is the biggest challenge. Yet if they can get them along, that change would be a lot easy. So that is from my side as far as the leadership goals, targets, and challenges during any of these kind of crisis situation.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, sir. I think there are multiple points discussed, which we would like to, again bring it back in the discussion round. How the show must go on. How do you really convert these opportunities into, challenges into the opportunities, and why it might actually become a good, point to actually put in some of these things like automation, restructuring, and all that. So probably I would like the other panelists to be in during the discussion round. We'll quickly move on to the second panelist, Professor Shailja Agarwal. Ma'am, over to you. I think you're on mute, ma'am.
So I was saying thank you, Professor Shawn, for giving me this opportunity to be here and to share my views on the topic. At the outset, I would also first like to thank our director, Dr. Bhattacharyya, because he has joined back very recently, I must say, and he has been very, very busy. In fact, we have not been able to meet a lot also, but my one email to him with a request, and he totally agreed. So thank you so much for taking this time out, sir. And Prasun and Amit, I will not address you as Mr. Goel and Mr. Gupta, because you have been my students. And thank you so much for joining us. And I hope that we will have very good discussion today. So as rightly pointed out by Professor Bhattacharyya, the challenges are multiple, from organizational perspective, from individual perspective, and perhaps the biggest challenge is how to bring about a balance between the organizational challenges in this time of crisis and also the individual challenges in this time of crisis. So what can a leader do? And Probably, I would like to say that Professor Bhattacharya is a better person to talk about how should a leader, what skills a leader should display, because he has been doing that very much, and the other panelists also. But from my limited perspective, I think leaders first themselves need to gear up to face this situation, and leaders at this point in time behave at 3 different levels. One, how leaders learn. 2, how leaders engage. And 3, how leaders think. So if I just go to the last point, how leaders think, it is the thought process of the leaders, to my mind, which reflects in how they are going to conduct themselves with their employees and at the organizational level. So a leader needs to be foresighted at this point in time. A leader needs to cut through all the noises, all the rumor mongering that happens, and look out for the most effective pieces of information and create a clear communication path for the employees and for the organization. That clear communication path is only possible if the leader is foresighted enough and the leader is able to think through properly. How leaders should engage. I think I come from the communications background, and I think this is the most important point to me, because engagement comes through communication. Just last week, I was in a webinar and we were discussing on how important it is to be empathetic, especially at this point in time. So employees, if we look at it from the perspective of employees, leaders need to be really empathetic towards their employees at this point in time, because India is a country which was not so ready for digitalization at an individual level. People have their own constraints to work from home. People have their own constraints to join office right now, because they might have kids. Maids are not available. I mean, maids are not advisable. Both the parents are working, so somebody has to be at home. So there could be multiple problems that an employee might be facing at this point in time, and all employees are not very forthcoming in sharing their problems. So a leader needs to really listen effectively, listen empathetically, display empathy, find out where are the problem areas, and if as an organization can something be done to plug that problem area. So empathy at this point in time, I think, is paramount. Case in example being, so many organizations, from the food industry, from the cab industry, so many organizations laid their employees off very recently. So Zomato, then Swiggy, then Uber, then I think Ola also. So many organizations. Now, did the organizations do it empathetically? So as Professor Bhattacharya was pointing out, there is certain thing called optimization of cost. So while the employee well-being is important, but the survival of the organization is also important. So agreed that those layoffs might be important or might be necessary. But were those layoffs communicated properly? Did the leader display empathy at that point in time? For example, Uber communicated the layoff through a Zoom call, a 3-minute Zoom call, and 3,500 employees were laid off. And there is so much discussion around the fact whether the decision to have this decision communicated through Zoom call, was it right or not? Was it empathetic enough or not? Because people were earning their bread and butter, and suddenly in a Zoom call, they come to know that they don't have any more jobs. So I think empathy is very, very important at this point in time. The second very important quality when leaders engage with employees and at multiple levels is candor. So you might want you want to give a negative news, but you must give it honestly. While you want to tone it down, but honesty at that point in time is very, very important, because as all of us know, there are a lot of rumors. So there might be a grapevine, salaries are going to be cut. There might be a grapevine that there are going to be layoffs, promotion freeze. Almost all organizations have gone for a salary cut or a promotion freeze or a furlough, something of that sort. So as a leader, are we communicating that information to the employees on our own and properly? and empathetically. That is very, very important. And as I said earlier, listening effectively is very, very important, because you really want to listen to what the employee is not able to say. That is something that is very, very important. And the last point is how leaders learn. So this is probably, this pandemic is a perfect example of disruption. So how quickly are leaders able to learn and adapt themselves to work in this disruption when the timelines have gone all haywire? As pointed out earlier, targets have to be met, and you have to find out ways to get the work done, get going. So how do you handle that disruption? That is something that a leader really needs to learn at this point in time, if not already done. I think I would sum up with this, that there are 3 levels: how leaders think, how leaders engage, and how leaders learn. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Shailja, for those insights. In fact, there is one point probably I would want the other panelists to weigh in on later, on how you mentioned regarding organizational crisis, issues and personal issues, individual issues. If they haven't, and what we would understand is there would be at low heads with each other at this particular time. So I'd really like the other 3 panelists during the discussion to be in on this, on how exactly would you go about resolving this particular issue. With that, I would like to move on to Mr. Prasun. The floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Professor Shawn. So we heard Professor Shailja and we heard our dear director, sir. And very good key takeaway from the ma'am is around communication, and which is very important. And dear director, sir, he also mentioned key points. One of them was that in these times, the organizations would need to optimize at all angles, because yes, of course, we all know there is no denying that the economy has slowed down, right? Your customers might be willing to spend their money, as he mentioned, the cash flow is very important, on their operation first, right? And then they would try to honor the contract they have given to you. So in terms of the cash flow and in terms of the business communication, these two are very key aspects. And I had some points around it, but I agree with, and I'll skip those points. What I wanted to present today, and I try to jot together a model, a paradigm, which is looking at 5 different dimensions. As in leaders, we really need to rediscover. The very first aspect is rediscover what is happening around the world. We know, it's general, the COVID is spreading, but how fast? There are different regions of the world. As in corporate, you do business with certain regions, you do business with certain industries, it, right? Because you're working. Now, as a leader, you should be on top of these information. How fast it is spreading, which geographies, which regions are able to control it. There have been some predictions which have also started coming in. Basis, the steps some of the governments have taken on improving the healthcare, on all the restrictions, lockdowns. Let's say 6 months down the line, how much it's gonna surge in each of these specific countries. By this time, all of us know which countries how much prepared in terms of their healthcare facility to tackle the surge. Now, the leader, as I said, rediscover. They should rediscover and try to capture. What are the opportunities? Which geographies? It has slowed down. Probably the business, the economy is gonna pick up. You may target those geographies. Those we will call opportunities, right? You would know that which countries, which regions are gonna go worst. You may try to realign, your business focus from these countries to a different set. So the first thing is rediscover. Then the second point, which I wanted to touch base upon, reimagine. Now, now that you have plenty of information, there are of course government sites, WHO sites to give you very accurate information. Now let's start reimagining. What do we reimagine? A couple of things. One is, how do you manage your employees to work in such a situations? There are lockdowns, there are intermittent lockdowns. Here, of course, work from home from a service industry perspective, and that too from an IT service industry perspective. Work from home have been, into the habits of the people, and these industries had the infrastructure, but these are really service industry, right? But there are other industries where, the IT infrastructure was not that great because they never needed it, right? They had to travel to their workplace and then start doing it, right? Nowadays, corporates are actually investing too much and very rapidly to make most of their employees work from home. But yes. So reimagine the ways of working. This is gonna be a new normal. Of course, we know there is a cycle time for an effective vaccination, a medicine, a cure to come up. It is far away. And till that time, we need to survive. We need to, make these things work. The economy, the ecosystem has to work, because one thing fits to another. If I am selling something to my customer, I'm also buying something from somebody else. So typically we deal with 4 kind of stakeholders. One is ourselves, my social environment. Second is, as our professor mentioned, our customers. I would, and our employees. One very important would be that our vendors. These are the 4 key stakeholders: your vendors, your customers, your employees, and your family, yourself. A leader has to balance on all these 4 fronts, right? So you need to manage your daily routine, your family, and all the stuff. You're also maintaining your employees, as Dr. Shailja mentioned. Communication is the key. No matter what, we need to be very transparent in our communication, and we need to establish a trust with our employees, because employees don't bosses, whatever they say. Employees go with the trust which has been established between the leaders and their employees, right? We need to be sensitive to our customers as well. And, because we are working day and night with our customers, we have realized that fact. Our customers, directors have mentioned, they are in dire need of cash flow. There is no cash flow. So if they don't have cash flow to run their operations, why would they gonna spend? Because I'm from IT services. They're not going to spend on the IT services. They said, let me get my house in order. So you need to be sensitive to the customer the way you are being sensitive to your employees. And then vendors, your industry is dependent upon your vendors as well. The vendors are also challenge. Now, if your vendor is not able to fulfill their side of the commitments, your cycle breaks. You won't be able to then complete your commitments to your customers. And then, your employees are going to take the hit. So these are the 4 key parties, which, as I said, the other thing which I wanted to, in the reimagine, as I said, one is, the innovative ways of working. People are discovering the work from home for one industry was always there, but other industries are, trying to make it work. And for the customer side, I would say that the need of the hour is, bring out a working model which reduces the cycle time of the delivery. So earlier, and again, my mindset would be from an IT service delivery, wherein you're delivering some of the software products or some of the customized softwares for them, making, some of the automations. But yes, right away, customers are looking that do not engage us so much, because we need to focus on our customers. So your customers are also having customers, right, which they are working on. So important is be sensitive to your customers. Be sensitive. Earlier, my customer was, let's say, spending X amount of time with us because we are solving their problem. Now they're not willing to spend even a 1/10 of the time, and I really mean it. Now, you need to improve upon this cycle with the minimum input from your customer. You need to deliver at a faster pace to make this work. That's again one of the key. And that's where we said, after rediscover, let's reimagine the ways of working. Then the third aspect of this whole paradigm was re-engage. And re-engage with your employees, re-engage with your customers. And I think, Dr. Shailja mentioned, how do you re-engage with your employees? Be trust, keep communicating, right? It's a pandemic which nobody has seen before, right? So nobody could have predicted, predicted that how you should be able to handle this in advance. So you learn doing it, but the basic tenets, business communication as a whole subject, the basic tenets do not change. If you and for the participants as well, if you have captured the basic tenets of business communication, at least this is a major area. This is a subject which would help you to deal with your employees and your customers very well. Then just moving on, the other 2 points. So we covered rediscover, we covered reimagine, then we covered re-engagement. Now let's rebuild and restart. Those are the last 2 models I wanted to touch upon. When we say rebuild and restart, you need to rebuild with your team. You need to align your workforce, as I said, to the areas where our opportunities are, to the regions where opportunities are. And when I say restart, you need to plan, because every leader has to make a plan, and let's plan long term. Let's invest more with the employees in terms of trainings, right? Don't let them think too much with an empty mind if they don't have much work to deliver. Many of the companies are utilizing this as an opportunity to train their employees. Last year earlier, we have heard from many of the research by Harvard's kinds of McKinsey's and all these folks, where they said in India, there is a gap of skill set. The kind of workforce you may need, you don't have that skill set available. So I think that's a very good time for leaders, for companies to invest and train their employees on the upcoming things. And again, build a plan. Let's do a restart. That's all I wanted to summarize. I hope, Dr. Shawn, I have not taken much of the time.
No, we are within limit. Thank you, Mr. Prasun. In fact, a lot of interesting points which have come up. Probably some things we can take it up during the discussion. One is, has work from home become the new norm, and how accepted it's both from my employee side and from our organization side. And we had talked about, I think Professor Bhattacharyya also had mentioned that it comes with a lot of challenges, and one of the most important things is a reorientation from our employee side in terms of the technology adaptation and how to take the work forward. So we'll touch upon these points during the discussion. Thank you so much, Mr. Prasun. I finally move on to our 4th panelist, Mr. Amit. Please, sir. I think you're on mute. If you can unmute yourself. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Shawn. So my fellow panelists, Mr. Prasun, Shailja ma'am, and Bhattacharyya sir, they touched upon some of the very important aspects of leadership during these crisis times. What I would say is that situations like these are the real test of leadership. During such times, leaders have the responsibility to sail their organizations and staff through these storms. Those leaders who embrace the new reality and refine their style with the demand of new ways of working will emerge as better leaders. as Mr. Prasun said, right, there are challenges which everyone of us adopt. There are technological challenges. There are challenges of the physical space. There are challenges for the people who need to work from home. They might not have is. I would like to say that from the discussion from three major aspects of our stakeholders, the customer, the shareholders, and the employees. So from a shareholders' perspective, during these times, it is important for senior leadership to stress on the purpose of the organization and clearly define the priorities. The leaders need to think through it and define what is the ordered list of priorities that they want to achieve within what time frame. Having a lot of things on their mind and stating it in through different channels would not be as effective as a clearly defined set of priorities important from a stakeholder's point of view to be achieved in these times. As Dr. Bhattacharya said, we need to rediscover ourselves to actually deliver more opportunities, to capture on the opportunities. So we need to define what we want to achieve clearly in these times. Coming from a banking industry, I have seen people who had been from SME sector or who had taken large loans from banks. Because of this pandemic situation, they are now struggling. They are struggling to repay their loans, their interest and their principals as well, right? They are in such a situation that they cannot survive their business. So it is very difficult for them to pay salaries to their staff to survive. We need to be empathetic. We need to be sensitive towards our customers in these times. These are untested territories for everyone. It is critical for leaders to make quick decisions and remain flexible in these times. Managing a global team, clearly and see that there are different type of requirements from different regions as we see across the globe, different phases. Then it was in the Americas and later on now in India. So at different time, different territories had different requirements. A decision provides flexibility to adjust actions according to local requirements. So it is essential that we enable our junior managers to take decisions. Employees. In present times, employee well-being is another important aspect to look at. Leaders and managers ought to enable flexible and remote working to keep their teams safe. As Prasun mentioned, it has, at least for some industries, it has become a norm rather than exception. However, while working from home, there is another very important aspect that needs to be looked at. It's about the mental health and balance for the employees. It is very important for people to switch off because now the boundaries between work and home are diluting. It's very important that organizations provide enough emphasis on the well-being, mental well-being of employees. HR leaders have their part to play in it. New programs need to be designed which are focused on physical and mental health and can be delivered through digital medium. So many organizations had these kind of activities where they used to engage their employees. But these programs now need to take a new form and shape. Has a very crucial role to play here. They need to engage employees, prepare such programs and deliver them digitally. For organization where most of the staff have been working from home, Shailja ma'am rightly pointed out, effective communication and collaboration are very important. So those are the one of the major parts of the puzzle that business leaders need to solve. there are tools available to communicate and collaborate effectively. At the same time, the challenge for managers has become manifold. They need to keep their employees, their staff engaged at all the times. The managers need to keep the well-being, the safety, and motivation of their employees at the forefront. I would like to touch base upon another very important aspect that is about sharing your feedback. So since this being a time where most of the organizations provide their media performance feedback, this was an activity which was traditionally done mostly in person. Now, the new ways of working with the adoption of video conferencing, we need to do these things as well as through video conferencing. So such sensitive topics which we were not earlier doing through video conferencing or through telecalls, we have to do it now through technological mediums. It is very important in these times when you are delivering such feedback to look for the sign of distress among your employees. Very important when you are dealing with low performance. Managers need to be sensitive. They need to find if there is anything in one's personal life which is affecting them, which is affecting their productivity. Managers need to be compassionate in their conversation, and they need to ensure that another very important aspect I would say is while delivering these things through these mediums, through technological mediums, and while people are working from home, is that while you're delivering these feedbacks, you ensure that your employees are not with their families. So it is very embarrassing for any person to be given negative. So the organization need to be sensitive about this fact as well, that we brought our work to our homes. So the homes are existing, the work also need to exist accordingly. Just in these times, each of us innovate customer and people should be at the forefront of any decisions we take.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Amit. That was an interesting thing. I think you touched upon many points which were put forward by the other panelists also. Since we have heard from all the panelists, there are a few points which have come up. Probably I'll put it forward, and if any of the panelists would like to weigh in on this, probably you can start off. So one of the things which have come across the talks of all four panelists is this sort of a dilemma on how exactly would you manage organize, and organize the challenge in terms of from an organizational perspective that the show has to go on. You still need to function. And there's this other challenge from an individual perspective, whether it is the customers or the employees, on how exactly do you manage the needs of these other stakeholders while ensuring business goes on as usual. So as from a leadership perspective, you can give your insights in terms of how exactly would you go about managing this.
So let me take up this quick. Now, of course, again, there are 2 points that in the time of disruption and from an organizational perspective, how do you cope up? How do you make this current setup still going with all the disruptions in place? On the employee side of it, we have to have a very, very clear, precise communication which your employees trust on going out. You need to have your human resource department in constant touch with the employee well-being, because when that happens, psychologically it has a huge impact on the employee. It would have on me as well if somebody is just making a phone call from my organization and inquiring about my well-being. Because normally we do not do it, and it is always the unexpected when it happens. It psychologically again it makes most of impact. So that's one. Secondly, I know the organizations are going through tough times in terms of very reduced cash flow, or their AR, their accounts receivable outstanding would be increasing because the payments are going to get delayed. But you know the organization should identify their purpose, the values the organization was set up, right? The leaders who are probably the board members, they must define their clear-cut priorities. Obviously, there would be cost optimization measures, but at least extending the SOPs to a workforce who are your foot soldiers. I would call foot soldiers. Let working from home, extend them some of like reimbursing their internet billing month on month. Do those kind of things. However small they are, they're not going to change. Either their word or the corporate's word, but psychologically it makes a big impact.
We have heard from the industry expert. I would like to hear from Professor Bhattacharya and Professor Agarwal in terms of how do you see it from a academic perspective? Like what how would you like to take it up, Professor Bhattacharya?
Yeah. See, I think what Mr. Gupta said is absolutely valid, but actually the main challenge, and this is the dilemma, real dilemma for a leader, as to whether to think in the short run perspective or in the long run perspective. Now, resizing is a very easy decision, right? If you have to cut down on your workforce, please do that and then go. But ultimately, you have to think about the future as well. And these people who were with you for such a long time, and if you just lay them off because you cannot pay them any further for whatever reason, you probably will get back, but you are actually losing big time on the reliability that the employees have on the organization. So you look at any big company, they try to retain people, they try to take care of the employees first, and keeping that in mind, whatever possible, in terms of cutting down on cost here and there, that is what they're doing. So the employee cost optimization probably should be the last option for a leader who is thinking in the long run rather than short run. Short run, immediate decision, cut down cost. But the long run impact would be absolutely, quite disastrous, because you lose faith among employees and your future employees. Maybe today you have to cut down on your costs, so you lay off some of the people. Tomorrow, as your business grow, you would like to hire some people. You may not get people that you want, right? Because of this lack of reliability issue. That's why I think there is a very real dilemma for a leader, whether to take side of the the organization or the employees. But any good organization would always take side of the employees, take good care of them, and try to manage the other sides, which are which they'll explore managing other sides. So but at the end of the day, if you are compelled to do some drastic step, take some drastic step, because you cannot survive, right? If you yourself cannot survive, you cannot actually take care of employees, which is a real situation. I'll accept Shailja's point that the empathy for the employees, if at all you are telling somebody to go, but do it in such a way that they don't carry a negative feeling about the organization. They know the real reason, and you have some, this kind of arrangement, so that they understand your compulsions, and they understand that you are doing it only because you are compelled to do it. You don't have any other option, right? So this is what very crucial, is really a very, very, very big dilemma for any leader.
Share a personal experience. What I have seen quite often in organization, in my organization and some others, right? Defining the purpose of the organization and reinstating it again and again helps a lot. When leaders do it very often, even if there are times when the hard decisions needs to, people have a better acceptance to it because they see how it is connected to the purpose of the organization. Defining it again and reinstating that that the decisions that are being taken are aligning to the purpose of the organization helps quite a lot in these times.
Okay. Thank you so much for your views on this. Pastor Shailja, would you like to add on anything more to this? This particular, I think you're on mute.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, there are two things to this. One is the decision of an organization, whether you want to retain the same numbers of your workforce or not. And number two, if you want to separate or part ways with some of them, then how do you conduct yourself with the existing workforce? Now, when you decide to part ways with some of your workforce, while it might be a very choiceless and a forced kind of decision, as Professor Bhattacharya was just pointing out, you might not get good people later because there is something called corporate reputation, which takes a huge dent when you part ways with people in large numbers. So getting the same name and maintaining your reputation in the market becomes very, very difficult. So I don't exactly remember the organizations, but I have also read articles where organizations even in this time, they have promoted their employees and they have said that you are a family and we are here with you. So look at the kind of trust that we as outsiders feel on these organizations now. We don't know the inside story, but there's a lot of respect and trust on these organizations. Then the point number two is that even when you have decided to part ways with some of your people, you have to consider the fact of what kind of impact it has on the existing or the retained workforce. So is the organization doing something to bring their morale back? Because obviously, if one of my colleagues goes away because of this situation and the hammer falls on the colleague, I will be devastated, and I will obviously feel not only about my colleague, but I will feel about my own job security as well. So what are the organizations doing, or is it the leader's role, or how should the leader then handhold the existing set of employees? That is also very, very important. And one more thing that I want to point out is, which all of us are probably forgetting in this discussion, is there is a lot of pressure on the leader. So we all assume that, the leader is a god and he or she was very ready for all kinds of situations and will be able to handle, but he or she has the same kind of pressure on himself or herself, work-life balance, digitalization, work from home, and yet the person is required to take care of the huge family in the organization.
Answer to boss. Answer to boss.
Sorry?
Answering to bosses. That is
Yes.
the main challenge.
Correct. Yeah, so a lot of pressure.
Yes, ma'am.
That was from
Okay,
my side, Dr. Shawn.
Okay, thank you for those insights. So I will try to blend in some of the questions also which have come. One of the major questions which is coming out is if you can actually cite examples of, all of you have been in leadership positions. If you can cite examples in terms of how you have changed your own style of working going forward. I think from an organizational perspective, work from home is one of the ways in which work has changed. But from a leadership perspective, what have, and if you can cite examples in terms of what have leaders done differently before, something as different to before COVID and after COVID? What has changed? So that's one of the questions also which have come up. I would like the industry experts to actually take it up first, and then probably we'll circle back to Professor Bhattacharyya.
Yeah, Amit, do you want to give a shot?
Yeah.
Sure. So a couple of things, Dr. Shawn, that I'd like to share with you. First, from the organization perspective, what my organization had done. Since I have witnessed it, so our organization delivered a number of things, right, in terms of enabling employees to work from home. So there was a lot of foresightedness. Even before the situation worsened and the lockdown was declared, my organization was among the first one to take a lead. Within the first week of March, it was declared that we would be working from home at least till September. So this was the foresightedness that the organization showed. So it enabled the employees, it delivered the IT kits, it delivered furniture to employees to actually work them effectively from home. So this was from organization perspective, what I clearly saw. Clear step which help the people to understand what they need to do and also enable them to achieve the results. Now coming to our own individual action. So for example, within my team, there were set of things that we had set out in the beginning of the year that we want to achieve, right? But as the situation changed, there were a lot of challenges. There were challenges of logistics, being people engaged. There were also challenges. For example, there were a few travels planned between UK and India. There were knowledge to take on new things. So we had to reprioritize. I specifically had to call out, take the inputs from my senior management. What are the key deliverables that you want me to deliver in these 6 to 9 months? And then based upon that, we clearly set out what we would be doing in these times. And then we did different things. For example, how we use technology to get those knowledge sharing sessions done. How we actually did a different kind of activity to keep, we had daily stand-up calls, which we never had in our team. We started that. And we started doing some of the fun things where we involved families as well. Right, we had Zoom calls involving our families. We had interacted at such a level that we never did before. So all that actually gelled us. So I would say that there are actions which we can take. Of course, there are challenges, but at the same time, there are into them.
Okay, well, that was great. Mr. Amit has gone ahead and explained it both from an organizational perspective and from a leadership perspective also. So I think most of our participants are interested in understanding from a leadership perspective that as a leader, how have you changed post the COVID crisis? Have your mantras changed? Have you gone about doing it something differently post the COVID crisis?
Let me try to answer this one. You know, as I said, we are already part of the service industry, more into IT side of it, and habitual of let's say work from home. But yes, of course, anybody's guess when you go to office, right? You had a chance of connecting with 10 or 15 of your colleagues, and your communications, because that happens easy, right? It can happen at a cup of coffee as well. It can happen as an informal talks as well, right? Both with bosses and with your subordinates. It goes both ways. Now, during these COVID situations, right? You're not meeting physically, so all are you dependent upon, your video calls, your audio calls, right? You're using, video calls or audio calls. So, on a personal side, start a bit because it's too much of a stress, because, even if you, just sentences from somebody, you really have to, do a phone call or a a Teams call or a Zoom call, right? Whatever the mode of communication installed. And so that's one. Second is we did not do that before, but yes, we have started some recurring sessions with our teams, respective teams, wherein there's work discussion, and those compulsory video sessions wherein just talk about social life, just talk about yourself, just talk about your family, and then you are also moving around the video saying hi, and the kids, the other person. So it's kind of an informal session which is happening through videos. Is just taking out the stress from your life for the time. And then we're also doing happy hours. I should be able to tell or not, but yes, Friday 8 or 9 there is an hour meeting with the senior leader. Everyone is video enabled. Everyone comes with their drink, and it is, and I felt it is as good as you used to meet personally. But then, yes, additional stress is there, but you need to do some exercises which just relieves the stress and give you more concentration. You can't do anything else. There's no option.
Okay, thank you. Interesting thoughts, and it's interesting to hear about the happy hours also. A good mode to actually keep up relationship going. So I would like to, we have already crossed the 1 hour limit, but since the discussion is still halfway through, probably we can take another 5-10 more minutes to wrap this up if all the panelists are okay with it. Shailja ma'am. Okay. So one of the major things which probably is still unresolved is how do you get the employees on board? It's good to discuss, saying that the organization would do X, Y, Z things, but the leader would change his way of functioning. How do you get the employees on board? And over the course, all the 4 panelists have talked about how the needs of the employees, the customers, everyone has changed. So, considering that the needs have changed, if probably can speak about how you get the employees on board, your customers on board. And I would like to hear from Person Bhattacharyya on this, in terms of, because most of our participants are aspirants of the executive program. Probably, if you can speak about how IMT as an organization has changed and how it hopes to actually ensure a seamless function of classes and all, even in these times.
Yeah. You see, any challenge actually opens up, I believe, a lot of opportunity for us for new things to do, right? And probably do things in a newer way. That is what has happened. If I talk about IMT in second week of March, we were not really, in any mood to believe that we can have meetings hours long over, this digital platforms, right? And first couple of weeks, we are in a kind of dilemma as to what to do, how to go about it, how to run the show, right? At the end of the day, you have to complete classes, you have to complete exams, you have to, evaluate students, and then, give them grades, and then they will go for summer internship. Some people will go and join final jobs. It was very confusing a period where we did not know how to function. But eventually, the biggest achievement of this is, I would say, that my boss, who always hated to touch a computer, who would always prefer to have a printout of every document that is presented to him, eventually has learned computer. Now he's typing his own mail, responding to emails on his own, right? That is the biggest achievement. So we have understood that whatever was our old belief was that we can function only in this way and not the other way is not there anymore. So we are very much open to a newer, techniques of executing our responsibility. So that is what is the biggest achievement which we have achieved in the last 3 months. In every level, right? So second, as an academic institution, our biggest challenge is, classroom delivery. We are faculty who are used to deliver in the regular classes, right? And we do a lot of, we apply a lot of pedagogical tools there. We are exporting that. We make it more interesting, make it more dynamic, make it more engaging. But when you try to replicate that entire experience in the online platform, we are finding it so very difficult, right? This is where faculty members have actually started training themselves. They are enrolling to many such programs, online programs of being offered by reputed institutions abroad, training themselves. We are organizing dummy sessions taken by all faculty members in the campus, so that you use that to experiment with the platform and learn how to deliver it in this platform also. Because we don't yet know when this pandemic is going to get over. We don't know when the students will eventually come to the campus and we go back to our old magic sessions. But our endeavor is always to create that same magic in the online platform. This is what I think, this is a big achievement of our faculty members, of our technology team. And I think, we should not underestimate the prowess of technology and the infrastructure we have in the country today. Imagine all companies running their discussions, businesses, everything on internet itself. And imagine kind of, the capabilities we have, which we could find out only now. Till that time, it was not known that we actually can run the entire show on internet based, using the existing infrastructure only. They have not set up any new infrastructure, maybe somewhere, but not really very large scale, that we have to revamp the entire infrastructure so that we can. So this is what I think is, is the biggest gain of this crisis situation. So every crisis gives you a huge opportunity to learn new things, about new ways of doing things. So that is what I think we have been able to do.
Okay, so I think you have given a very clear example in terms of how IMT has actually used the challenge, converted it to an opportunity, and then probably, hopefully going forward, it would help in better delivery of content.
May I add one more thing? And I think this is true for many other organizations also. We are not counting our number of hours given in a given day. Every faculty is engaged for 8 to 10 hours on average for this or that. We stopped counting number of hours we're putting in it on a daily basis, right? Because if you work from home advantage, so we are sitting at home, though we don't feel tired, we don't feel the pressure that we are away from home. We have to travel such a long distance. We have to go back after driving such a long distance. We are sitting at home, we are at the comfort of our home, so we don't count our number of hours we're putting in. So actually, the total employee hour has gone up during this period. This is another achievement which we have observed.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Would the other panelists like to add on to this particular point before we wrap up? Anything from Mr. Prasun, Mr. Amit? Something you would like to add on? Okay. Okay, it was a very interesting discussion. I think we covered a lot of points with regards to what leadership means, what are the different dimensions which come, the kind of challenges which leaders are facing at these times, and how do you go about actually resolving some of these challenges. So it was really nice to hear from all four panelists, Mr. Bhattacharyya, Mr. Agarwal, Mr. Prasun, Mr. Amit. So much for your insights. We haven't received many questions on the chat box, so I would advise all the participants, you can write to the program office regarding your questions, and we would love to answer any queries you might have regarding the program, regarding this particular webinar. Please do write to us. I would like to use the opportunity to thank all four of the panelists for taking out the time to be part of this particular webinar. It was a really nice hearing from you, and hope to be in touch with, especially with our alumni panelists. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shawn, for this wonderful moderation. You have done a great job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Have a nice
Good
evening.
day.